Okay, we're up and running now. So hey everyone, this is John, Liam, and Mary. We're doing our virtual chat in lieu of this week's discussion board. So let's just start with question one. What was your reaction to the Charlotte Danielson framework we read about this week?
So it was pretty organized into 4 different sections. I think basically it generally just teaches you how to be a good teacher. It could be applied to STEM teaching because you have to be a good teacher to be a good STEM teacher, but I don't see how it directly relates to STEM. It just relates to being a teacher in general.
I think that's fair. I kind of agree with that. I think, one of the nice things about it is kind of the broadness. So it's not focused on any one particular aspect, or it's not just grades, good grades. That's what you want. I think it wants every aspect of teaching and kind of personality and classroom management and all of those things. And I think that might be where it applies to STEM too, that we're not just looking on, you're not just want your kids to be recalled, but you want them to be good scientists too. So again, not just judging the product of the teacher, but you're judging, how they relate in the class, how they deal with the students, how they interact with parents as well. So, I mean, it's subtle in that I might be clutching at straws, but that's what occurred to me.
Yeah, I think that's its biggest strength is it breaks down teaching, which is a really complex task, into a bunch of little parts. So this is what we used for our evaluations, and it's nice to get that feedback from whoever observed you, and you can see exactly what you did right, what you need to improve on. So like for me, one of the areas I needed for growth was knowing the knowledge of the different students, their strengths and weaknesses, being able to call on the kids who won't participate themselves. So it's nice to hear that feedback and then to be able to make that adjustment for the next time.
It's good.
So what about you guys? When you were both observed already, I take it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you got your breakdown back, was there anything that stood out as being surprising?
Not so much. I mean, I think for me, and again, I have a little bit more classroom experience than you guys, but if I probably could have called where it was going to, be low as such beforehand. And, that there are areas of my, that I need to work on. But there was 1 or 2 things just about use of language. And I think at one stage I said, no, this is fairly straightforward, but you don't want to do that in a class because that can isolate a few people who don't find it to be straightforward. So, use of language in that sense. But it just shows as well just how many things that you need to work on as a teacher and be aware of.
Yeah. Mine didn't surprise me either. They said I had to work on my management, which I already know I have to work on. So, yeah, I was not surprised.
That's fair. You're a first-year teacher.
Yeah. Definitely a struggle.
Okay. Let's jump ahead to the second talking point. For the PGCPS teacher evaluation page, what are your thoughts on evaluation being equally distributed between professional practices and student growth?
Kind of a little bit the same as before. I don't know exactly that it should be equal, but I think it is important. People tend to react badly to being assessed as such. So, they feel it's nearly an assault on themselves. But so it's nice to break that up a little bit into how you're doing, but also what they're getting out of it. And I mean, if you make assessment of teachers purely about one thing, such as grades, there's things you can do to get good grades right now, that aren't necessarily in the broad scheme of things like proper education or teaching skills or whatever. You can drill recall into students, but they're not getting a full education. So I think as broad as you can make it, or everything benefits from it being broader and more open in that sense. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway, because I feel like your students can get really good test scores, but there can still be ways that you can improve your teaching. So it's nice to look at both sides. And on the other hand, you could be a really good teacher, but if your students aren't scoring well in their assessments, that means maybe you need to reevaluate your learning outcomes or whatever you're doing in class. So it's nice to look at both sides to get the full picture of how you can improve yourself.
I felt the same way. I thought that the student growth was more qualitative. Wait. Yeah, the student growth was more quantitative. It was more like numbers, and then
Yeah.
professional thing was more qualitative.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a fair assessment. I mean, again, that idea of there's different ways you could go about teaching in order to get them better results. I mean, you could just say these are what the questions are going to be. Let's learn the answers, which is extremely limited. Or you could, be a more holistic teacher as such, and drive, learning the skills and then teaching or thinking for themselves, etc. And you could get to the same goal, but the difference in path or whatever is vital and makes a big difference.
Yeah, the numbers, they only tell you so much. You can look at the students' test scores and know very little about how effective their teacher is. So you need to do some observation as well and look at the whole picture. Okay, cool. So the third talking point, we're looking at the Danielson and UDL crosswalk and the scenario about Maria. So which of her challenges relates to our own? What did she bring to a pre-conference observation that we would also bring? What else would we bring that she did not?
Well, one of the challenges that she dealt with was disruptive students, which, as I said before, is what I deal with. And she just would walk up to them and they would start working again, which sometimes works with me, but sometimes they like really deeply don't care and they'll just like continue not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And
Yeah. My challenge is very similar to that in keeping all students engaged. I know one of the classes I intern in has 33 kids, and we only have 33 seats in the class. So it's inevitable that one or two kids just does not stay on task. And no matter what you tell them to do, they will not do their work. And it just happens. We had a kid who T medication, he forgot to take it one day, and it was a nightmare trying to get him to focus. We were doing a lab. So I can totally relate to that issue.
And there really is no quick or easy answer to any of that. I mean, one of my favorite schools I ever taught in was, I was doing cover for maternity, but they were all sons of farmers, and they were charismatic and smart, but they had no interest in being in school. They wanted to be out, having or, whatever it was doing, they had no real reason or wish to be there. And, it all comes back to motivation. And I mean, I suppose as teachers, we got to find a way to motivate our students to want to learn, like to make that fun. But again, there's no quick or easy way to do that. And it's never going to work for everybody either. So, I mean, if you guys work it out, write a book. I'll buy it.
Well, one of the ways Maria in the scenario said she would improve engagement is with student-driven opportunities. So she sort of acknowledges that different students are going to be motivated by different things. Some need hands-on activities, others, they might want to watch a video or read a book. So she tries to get them involved in different ways. And I found that helps. We've done a little station teaching in my classes, and just having them do different things sometimes can help them out. Like at one station, they'll be a little more active. They'll do matching, and at another station, they'll play computer games, and the other station, they'll read something and answer some questions. And at least in my limited experience, that's been pretty helpful, because at least one of the stations will appeal to the student, so they'll find something to latch onto, and that'll keep them focused for a while.
sounds like a good idea.
So what is something she brought to her observation that you would also bring, and what is something additional that you would bring to the table for the pre-conference observation?
She brought some lessons and showed how they aligned to some standards. And then just formative assessment, she was talking about that. And
oh, go ahead, Mary.
And I would also bring, like, I think she was just talking about how her lessons aligned. I would actually want to bring the lessons just to get some feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I said the curriculum outline is one of the big ones, because it has the learning outcomes. One of the points she made was that it was in a student-friendly language, which I think is really good. If your students don't understand the outcomes, then they really are very useless. The skills, the topics that they're going to cover. One of the things I said that I would bring in addition My mentor teacher uses a seating chart, and she has little notes for all the students, which ones like to sit where, who she cannot partner together because they'll be off task, which ones need specific accommodations. And I think that really shows knowledge of the students. You know, she knows them, she knows how they're going to learn best and what might distract them. So that's another thing that I would bring to a conference if I had that available to me.
Yeah, I think just sometimes it's hard, you know, I mean, it's hard to kind of have that passion or, you know, kind of your ideas or your overall what you want to bring to the classroom. It's hard to kind of get that down on paper. So again, you know, this is something else I don't necessarily have an answer for, but you know, how would you, you know, show where your real passion lies, or how you want to bring personality into all of that? Again, you know, I don't have an answer for this, but I mean, I think, you know, sometimes I sell myself better in person maybe than on paper. So that sort of thing, you know, I like the interview setting because I can talk about it a little bit more animatedly maybe than I could put it down. But I mean, you know, personality is so important in a classroom, and you can only do things, or you guys were talking about, you know, discipline and classroom management things as well before. You can be told 100 different ways of doing something, but you have to find the one that you believe in, or that you can actually implement. Okay, how will this work for me and my personality? Because if you're trying to do something the way somebody else is going to do it, it's probably not going to work. You know, and I mean, that echoes itself as well a little bit in just how kids are going to teach too. So you want to try and find out how they like to absorb things, because, you know, just because they're sitting beside somebody who absorbs it one way, it doesn't mean it's going to work for them either. But
yeah, and I think that was in one of the readings for this week. They talked about when you establish classroom rules, for example, that you have to do that early and then stick to those rules. And if you try to implement a new rule later in the semester, kids will not buy into it.
Right.
So that might be something else to bring to a pre-observation conference, is the rules that you've generated with your students. That way, both sides are involved in the creation of the rules, and there's a mutual understanding of what is and is not acceptable in your classroom.
Sure, and if you can get them to buy in, again, like a buy-in is so important. You know, if they feel involved and there's a buy-in, you know, it has a greater chance of success, I suppose.
Okay, and our last talking point is about how we see the Danielson framework influencing an environment of respect and rapport. How does it relate to positive classroom management? This is sort of what we were just talking about. That's part of the second domain, and you know, just establishing rules with your students that are clear and both sides understand what's expected of them. You know, you should address your students in a respectful tone, be sensitive to their individual needs, and they should respect their fellow students and respect you as the teacher, so on and so forth.
I think we take that a little bit for granted too. I mean, we're certainly older than our students, and I mean, sometimes I'm amazed by the fact that, you know, they're meeting kids for the first time as freshmen or whatever, but they really don't know even how to introduce each other, you know, a handshake, things like that can just be terrible, you know. So, and that's one of the things, even as teachers, like you say, in the Danielson framework, we get graded on. And I think it's important to model and exhibit that in order for your kids kind of to pick up on that too, you know. And again, it's just one of these other things as a teacher. You're not teaching content. You have to be a parent and an older brother and an uncle and things like that, as well as everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's all equally important, really.
The modeling is a good word there, because students they'll copy what you do, and if you're respectful and you show up every day and you have a good attitude and you're productive, I think, you know, that'll feed off on them and they'll emulate that to an extent.
Yeah, knowing names. You know, that's something I work hard on every year, and people say, you know, God, you're really good at that or whatever. But again, I put a lot of effort in to try and get the names as quickly as possible. You know, because that's your first line of meeting anybody, you know, knowing their name as such. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy.
It's true. It took me like 3 or 4 weeks to know their names.
Sure. Yeah, and it does. I mean, you know, that's not bad. I mean, there's a lot of people who take until Christmas. But, yeah, no. Again, though, I think it's very important that's a lot of what you're doing, you get your seating chart and you hold it there in front of you, and you try and recite the names and try and picture faces and things if you're looking at a roll sheet. Yeah, but yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and how that relates to classroom management and learning, I don't think learning will occur if there's no respect there.
Right.
You know, if the class is out of control and they're not listening to you as the teacher and they're not working well together, it's going to be hard to get anything done for any learning to occur at all. So
Yeah.
you have to really set that straight in the first couple of weeks of the course, and then maintain that every day throughout this semester, throughout the year.
That's true.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure, guys.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes me the most nervous, is just, you know, the classroom management stuff.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're really, like, again, I did this before, but yeah, there's very little other than experience. And I think, again, the personality thing is what you are happy doing. Again, just because the teacher across the hall says this works, if you don't believe that it will work and think it works with your personality, you won't carry it out right, and it's not going to do the required, you know, you're not going to get the required benefit out of it. So see what does work for your personality, you know. And some teachers do things that I think are crazy, or how can you get away with that? But again, it's through delivery and personality, and if that's the way you act the rest of the time, you know, it makes the difference. But yeah, like I said.
So how long did it take you to get your class under management?
Yeah, I mean, my father was a teacher, so kind of in a way a well-respected one, and I say that, you know, with all humility. So even growing up in the house, certainly respect, I mean, was an enormous thing, you know. And but it's funny then as well, I see other teachers who were terrors when they were students, and I actually feel like I'm missing out because I see a kid acting like a maniac in front of me and I just don't understand it. But it takes a while. But again, it's all about your comfort level, really, because when you're comfortable trying to impose something or, you know, allow things, it works. And yeah, I think that's really the key, just finding, how will I be good? How will I feel good? Because once you feel good doing it, you'll follow it through. And it has to be all about follow through. So, you know, again, you can't, you know, shouting's no good. It has to be extremely rare, you know, but however you feel you can impose and get people working the way they should be, again, that speaks to your personality. And again, something you can follow through on. That's how it has to be. And all these other great ideas that people tell you all the time, wonderful, but adapt them to your personality. Yeah. And, you know, I always say as well to kids, I'm not trying to change your personality. I don't want you to stop being a teenage boy. I teach all boys, but, you know, I don't want to change your personality, but you just need to know from time to time, you can't be in control and you have to follow some orders. And that's the lesson that I'm trying to teach you. But yeah, it's a crapshoot is one of the terms I've learned over here. It's a crapshoot. Yeah.
That's deep.
Good enough?
Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to point out that didn't really relate to one of the questions. Is I liked that the Danielson framework, it took into account how you plan the lesson beforehand, what goes on during the lesson, and then also communicating with the parents and professional dress, all those little things. So it takes into account all the different aspects, which I find is nice because I'm a person that likes to plan things out ahead of time as much as possible. And then when things go wrong, I try to be flexible, but it doesn't always end up that way.
Right.
So it's nice getting that kind of feedback that not other observation methods provide. Like you can't have kids take a test and find out how well their teacher planned or how flexible they were. It's just not something a number can give you.
Well, that's nice for me too, but for a different reason, because I'm not the world's greatest planner ahead of time, but it forces me a little bit out of my comfort zone. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's kind of, it's a fair, broad, holistic way of doing it. And, you know, that, again, like our teaching, we want to try and reach everybody. So it's the same way with the teaching and teachers.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I think that's everything, unless you have anything else to add.
I'm good here.
I'm good here too.
Okay, great. It was nice chatting
Thank
with
you
you
very
guys.
much. And John, cheers for doing the recording and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
Much
Have a good
appreciated,
one.
guys.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Take care.
You too.